We're back now for your questions or vicious criticism, whatever you like, for economics professor Alex Tabarrok of George Mason University, Nick Gillespie from Reason Television, and David Bose of the Cato Institute. So, first from my Facebook page, Jason Canada asks, talk about defending the indefensible, should Russian roulette be legalized? And suicide is illegal in America.
Well, it's not like you're really going to deter it by making it illegal if you're not already deterred. In addition, we let people climb Mount Everest, and 5 to 10% of the people who climb Mount Everest die. So should we prohibit that? Is it really that much different than climbing Mount Everest?
Okay, questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
Along the lines of selling organs, what about a family being compensated for maybe giving up a child?
Ooh, that's defending the indefensible.
What do you mean, like if they give a kid up for medical experiments?
Instead of adopting, being compensated for that.
I thought about that with my kids a couple times. But
yeah, I'm afraid mine would trade at a very low rate. So I'm waiting for their value to
there's a high demand. There's a high demand to adopt.
Right.
And much along the lines that there's a high demand for organs. I'm not saying it's a good idea. It's just something to think about.
Well, clearly, what you mean is giving up a child to be raised by another family, not for medical experimentation.
Exactly.
Anything like that.
Let's start with
that,
at least.
In that case, this is an example, it seems to me, of a lot of these kinds of cases where it's clearly legal to do it not for money. Lots of people give their children up for adoption, presumably because they don't feel capable or they think somebody else could do a better job. Should they be compensated for that? Well, there are ways that people do get compensated by, if you're a surrogate mother, having your expenses paid and maybe a little more than your expenses and so on.
But you're not allowed to do an outright sale.
Well, it would never be an outright sale because children can't be owned. So it's not a sale like selling a table. The question is, should it be legal to sell to someone the right to care for your child? And there, I guess I would say, if you can give it away, if you can allow somebody else to care for your child without being compensated, what's the difference?
Things are okay unless money's involved, and somehow then it gets nasty, like with the organs or whatever else.
Well, a lot of people feel that way.
Thank you.
And a lot of people die waiting for an organ because people feel that way. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Scalping, organ sales, and prostitution. If you factor in greed and desperation, with greed, scalping, some people were able to position themselves to get tickets so they can scalp them, and the general public couldn't get the tickets. So the general public was indeed hurt because these tickets were taken right off the top. In terms of organ sales, people who are desperate...
Let's do them one at a time.
Okay.
Here. Who wants to take that?
Yeah, when you look at the rise, has anybody here used StubHub or, systems essentially that are legal scalping and reselling venues, and it increases the possibility that people are going to be able to get into a show or a concert or an event.
But StubHub sells the tickets for a reasonable price.
Well, yeah, but reasonable is extremely subjective.
Actually, I tried to use StubHub to get tickets for the Book of Mormon on this trip to New York, and they weren't reasonable by my standards. But they had tickets, and the theater didn't. So I did have a choice, at least. I could have gotten tickets for a price.
The scalper also takes a risk. He could buy up these tickets, and there's no demand. He loses money.
Yes, I sold tickets on StubHub, and I had to sell them at below the list price because I'm afraid a ticket to the Washington Nationals is not that hot a ticket.
Well, take your second one. We'll give you one more.
Well, if I'm going to get one more, let me just go to the prostitution, because doesn't prostitution, doesn't it encourage the serious problem we have of human trafficking? We've got children that are being trafficked and sold all over the world, and prostitution actually encourages that.
Well, in fact, if we have this problem in a world where it's prohibited, then the question is, would it make it worse if it was legalized and then regulated in some way? And I would argue from the experience that we had with alcohol prohibition, as well as countries that have either legalized or basically decriminalized prostitution, you actually see a remission in the problems that are associated with it.
You're saying, as a general rule, legal markets are usually more transparent.
That's right.
You can see what's going on. They are, in fact, regulated, although I'm opposed to a lot of kinds of regulation. But the basic point is they're above board and they're transparent, and that's generally better for everybody involved in the market than being under the table, undercover.
Who's next?
So bounty hunters are cheaper than the police. Presumably, a lynch mob would also be cheaper than a judge, jury, and executioner. What's the difference between the two, and why?
Well, excuse me, a lynch mob can get someone who's innocent, obviously, and that's a cost. That's a cost to the system. The bounty hunters are going after people who have promised to show up for trial. So the felony defendant has promised to the bounty hunter that he's going to show up for trial. So it's simply a matter of breaking that contract. If the person doesn't want to go into the contract with the bounty hunter, they don't have to do that.
And we're officially against lynch mobs on this program. Yes, sir.
With the topic of blackmailing and insider trading, how about corporate espionage, or paying someone to find out insider trading or information about a person?
There's already a lot of corporate espionage that's legal. There's a society of competitive intelligence professionals, and they have annual meetings. And I was always, I knew somebody who worked there, and I would always say to him, so they get together and they give speeches on how they spy on each other's companies? I don't get it. But the fact is that all kinds of data gathering, intelligence gathering, and even things that you might call espionage are legal. So what you want to do is define what should be illegal. It's not illegal to go to the other grocery store and check their prices. It's not illegal to watch who's buying and who's selling to the extent that that's publicized. It is illegal to break into people's offices and to break into people's computers. So we ought to define the actions rather than just using some sweeping word like espionage.
Thank you for your questions. We're out of time. Thank you, Alex Tabarrok, Nick Gillespie, David Bose. Coming up, my take on defending some things you might call indefensible.